development of so-called global supply chain or global value chain, as some people call it, has seen an explosion since the 1990s. And this was the result of a combination of things. I mean, a lot of people simply say that, oh, this is the result of the development of technologies of communications and transportations. Yes, there have been some of that, but it's not as if before the 1990s we didn't have airplanes. We didn't have international phone calls and telexes and even the primitive forms of electronic communication. So yeah, this technology was only one factor. I mean, the other factor was the change in global trading regime. The birth of the WTO that made it much more difficult for countries to regulate international trade and international investment, and then gave a lot more leverage to global corporations. Also, since the 1980s, a lot of developing countries, former communist countries, gave up their old approach and basically gambled on the being a good partner in the global value chain. So before the 90s, a lot of countries all wanted to produce their own cars, but then later they realized that no, actually we could do quite well by becoming makers of certain parts of cars. We don't have to produce the entire car ourselves. So these kind of changes in their perspective also made a difference. And then you also saw the emergence of giant global firms because in the 90s and early 2000s, we had huge boom in global mergers. So, of course, we have had global companies from the late 19th, early 20th century, but their relative size and their reach and their coverage, there's no comparison between global firms of today and global firms of even 1970s and 80s. So now you have this huge global firms which have operations in, I don't know, 75 countries. The supplies 35% of the world market in what they're producing. And yeah, so when you have that kind of firm, it becomes a lot easier to organize supply chain. So that this development of so-called global supply chain, global value chain, is a combined result of changes in the global trading regime, most importantly the emergence of the World Trade Organization, changes in national economic policies, partly driven by the WTO, but also by changes in the perspective of many nations in terms of what they think of international trade and investment, some technological development, but also the mergers and acquisitions that have created these global giants.